Hello, everyone. I'm Aiden Durham with 180 Law Co. in Denver, Colorado. And you're watching All Up in Your Business. California passed a new bill this week, which is being coined the Uber law, that could have a major impact for a lot of businesses and workers. So in this episode of All Up in Your Business, we're going to talk about that new bill and what it could mean for your business. Then I'm going to get on my soapbox for a minute and just go on a little rant. So stay tuned for that too. But before we get into it, be sure to like and subscribe and share this video if you are so inclined to share it on your face spaces and your Twittergrams and your Snap Talks. Also, check the description for additional information and for some links to a few freebies and downloads that you may want to check out. So, California passed a bill this past week concerning classification of gig workers. Gig workers, it's a term that they're using for people like Uber and Lyft drivers, DoorDash drivers, anyone who drives or delivers for these on-demand services and apps. That's generally who they're referring to as gig workers. The point of the bill is to prevent these big companies like Uber and Lyft from misclassifying their drivers as independent contractors instead of employees. Companies love to hire contractors over employees because contractors are less expensive than employees, and employees bring a lot of responsibility to the employer. If you're an employee, your boss can set your schedule, tell you what kind of work to do and exactly when, where, and how you do it. Your employer gives you all your tools and supplies. They have a lot of control and instruction over you. Your boss also has to pay minimum wage laws. They have to provide workers' compensation coverage in case you're injured on the job. They have to give you meal and rest breaks. And you may get unemployment benefits if your job is terminated. Independent contractors, on the other hand, are essentially independent business owners. They set their own prices, they decide their own work schedule, they determine the type of work that they do and don't do, and they use their own supplies, tools, and equipment. The contractor is responsible for herself if she's injured on the job, and she's not entitled to any kind of benefits or coverage from the employer. So if the bill in California is approved and it becomes law, a worker in California is going to have to be treated as an employee unless 3 qualifications are met. Number 1, the worker is free from control and direction over performing the work. Number 2, the work provided is outside the usual scope of the business for which the work is performed. And number 3, the worker is customarily engaged in an independently established trade or business or occupation. So that's kind of what the law, what the bill is codifying, is those requirements for when someone has to be treated as an employee. And so if this bill passes and becomes law, Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, Postmates, and many businesses like them, small and large, this isn't just going to affect the big businesses, it's going to affect the little guys with similar business models too. All of them may have to start treating all of their workers, all of their drivers, all of their people as employees. This could be a gigantic shift in their business models and a huge cost and expense for them. I'm not necessarily saying it's a good or bad thing. I think there are certainly benefits to it, but it is going to have its negative effects on a lot of people and a lot of businesses too. So we'll just have to see about that. But this shift and this change could have a trickle-down effect on the drivers and the consumers, the customers as well. Generally, it's better for the worker to be treated as an employee rather than an independent contractor. Typically, from the worker's standpoint, it's better that way. But with this change, these companies are probably going to have to start making changes to how they let their workers work, such as limiting how many drivers can be on the clock at any given point in time or at certain times throughout the day. So, so they don't have to pay a bunch of drivers to be on the clock during a really slow period in the day. And because of minimum wage laws that will now be applied to their employees, these companies may have to start raising their rates in order to remain profitable. If Uber's paying their driver $15 an hour, the driver needs to bring in at least $15 an hour in fares in order for Uber to make a profit off of it. This bill, if it becomes law, will only apply to businesses that operate in California. But it really is a pretty good indicator that change is a-coming. If this does become the law, it's not going to be long before other states start catching on and considering similar legislation. Sure enough, it will eventually spread out in some way into other states. So even if your business is not in California, this is an important development to be aware of because its residual effects could be much broader reaching. Okay, and now for my rant. I was so excited when I heard about this bill being passed. I cannot tell you the number of conversations that I have that go something like this. Me. I don't think that's right. You shouldn't do it that way. Client. But everyone else in my industry does it this way and they're fine. Or, but all the big companies are doing it this way and they're fine. They seem to be fine, so I'm going to do it that way too. I will die on this hill. Just because everyone else is doing it does not make it correct. Just because Uber and Lyft have been treating all their drivers as contractors this whole time doesn't mean that that classification was correct. It just means that the law hasn't dealt with it and made a decision yet. This is especially true for new industries and developments. If you're launching a brand new service that has never been done before, chances are there aren't a whole lot of relevant laws that apply to that service. But the law will eventually catch up and you're going to have to abide. Let's take dockless bikes and scooters, for example. It's been pretty much a free-for-all since these things came out, with people just abandoning them in the middle of sidewalks and in random places on private property and all that. Riding them recklessly at high speeds in crowded places. Many people get upset and they're like, how can this be legal? How is this okay for them to be doing this, for this business to be operating like this? Well, drafters of the laws weren't considering electric powered scooters that can just be rented on an app and then left anywhere because it wasn't a thing. But now that we're realizing it's an issue, cities are starting to create regulations specifically around those businesses. So if you have a new business idea or if you want to get into a new industry, you can't just look to what everyone else in that industry is doing, especially if it is a brand new industry, because no one else knows what they're doing either. They're making, or their lawyers are making, their best guesses based off of the current state of the law, which often doesn't really address the business. So that's really the point of this video. I didn't care that much about talking about the California bill itself. I really just wanted an opportunity and a good context to say all that stuff. So really, the biggest takeaway from this video is do not rely on what everyone else is doing for affirmation that what you're doing is correct. Okay, well, that's all for this episode. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Thank you all so much for watching. I'm Aiden Durham, and I'll see you next time.